I wanted to send you this because I got a question this morning from Allie as she's reading through her Bible. She was in Leviticus 16, and she asked a question about something going on there, and I thought, well, this might be good for other people to know a little bit more about. So I thought I'd just share with you this morning in this format, and we'll see how it goes. The question she asked is, what's the deal with the two goats in Leviticus 16? You can read it, and you'll find that Moses told Aaron, or God told Moses to tell Aaron, take two goats, and I want you to do these two things with the two goats. And one of the goat is for the Lord, and the other, in the ESV Bible says, is for Azazel. And who or what is Azazel? And the deal is, we don't really know, but there's some different ideas about Azazel. If you read the King James Version of the Bible, it'll say one is for the Lord and one is a scapegoat. And that's where we get the term scapegoat, but that doesn't really tell us any more than for Azazel, and that's actually in the Hebrew, Azazel. So there's a couple of ideas. Azazel is known in Israelite mythology as a demon. So one goat is for the Lord and one goat is for a demon. What's that all about? Now, if you read in Leviticus 16, it says this. You take the first goat, the one that's for the Lord, and you kill it, and you take its blood and you use that to make atonement for all the things in the tabernacle. So this is while the children of Israel are wandering in the desert, and so in the tabernacle we got to make atonement for the things, for the mercy seat and for the tent of meeting, and that'll purify it from the sins of the people. And then what do you do with the other goat? Well, what happens is Aaron lays both his hands on it and then he confesses all the sins of the people, and he transfers those to the goat. And then he sends the goat alive out into the wilderness. What's going on there? First of all, this is the only place that I can find in the Old Testament, in the law, where Aaron lays both his hands on the head. There are other times where he lays one hand, or the elders lay hands on something, but this is the time where Aaron is putting both his hands onto the goat and confessing or transferring all the sins of the people onto the goat. And then he sends the goat out. What's the deal with sending it out? Here's the idea that Leviticus is trying to tell us. There is a sense of sacred space. Sacred space is a place where God can dwell. And God's telling the children of Israel, I will live with you. And in order to do that, you need to make space for me. Special space, set apart. It's sacred space. And we're going to do it right in the middle of the wilderness. Remember, the children of Israel are wandering in the wilderness, but we can carve out sacred space, place for God to dwell in the wilderness. And that's why they have all those laws about ceremonial cleanliness, having nothing to do with sin or sinful behavior, but just being clean and unclean. God is making a distinction. So you remember, there are passages where it talks about if a person has a lesion or a boil or some kind of discharge, that person is unclean, not because of a sin, but just we're making a distinction between what is allowed close to God, what is sacred, and what isn't. And that's what Leviticus 16 is telling us. And the whole book of Leviticus is telling us the difference between sacred space and non-sacred space. And the wilderness symbolizes the non-sacred space. That's where the bad stuff is. That's where the demons are. That's where the anything that's not God lives. Think about this. Moses is wandering in the wilderness, right? And he comes across Sinai, and he encounters God at the burning bush. And what does God say? You know what? In the midst of all this wilderness, this is sacred space. Take off your shoes, Moses, because the ground you are standing on is holy ground. It's a sacred space that God has created in the midst of the wilderness. In the New Testament, think about Jesus. Where did he meet the devil to be tempted? In the wilderness. It says the Spirit drove him out into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. And where does Jesus say the demons go when they're driven out of a person? They go to waterless places, the desert, the wilderness. That's where the bad stuff is. And the sins of the people are taken out of the place where they live, out of the camp, sent out into the wilderness. And that's where the sin goes. God is separating sacred space from non-sacred space. Now think about this. In the New Testament, in the book of Hebrews, we read this, that we can confidently draw near the throne of grace. What's he talking about? What is there a throne? I don't get that. If you don't have this idea from Leviticus 16 in your head, you might not understand it. So think about this. Remember, in that scene, and go back and read Leviticus 16, but in that scene, Aaron takes the blood from the one goat that is slain for the Lord, and he uses it to sprinkle and make atonement for the holy place. He sprinkles it on the mercy seat. What is the mercy seat? That's the lid of the Ark of the Covenant. So where is God's throne? That lid of the Ark of the Covenant, the mercy seat, is his footstool, it says. And God is enthroned on the cherubim. Remember, the cherubim are those two creatures, one on either side of the Ark of the Covenant. So the Ark's here, and then on either side of the cherubim, and God is enthroned on the cherubim, and so the lid of the Ark is his footstool. That's where the throne is. So where's the throne of grace? It's inside the Holy of Holies. And only Aaron can go there, only once a year, and only with the blood of this goat. But God is saying in Hebrews 4, that's changed. There's something new happening, that now we, because of the blood of Jesus, can approach confidently the throne of grace, not in fear, but because God has made us sacred space. So the message of the New Testament is that we are the temple of the Lord, which means we are sacred space. We are a place fit for God to dwell. The Spirit of God lives within us, yes, as a group of people, but also as individual believers. The Spirit of God inhabits us. We are holy space, and that means we can approach confidently to the throne of grace. So, the goat for Azazel is the sin of the people being sent away from them out into the wilderness, where we are made, on the other hand, holy space, a sacred space for God to dwell. And I think that's really encouraging.